This video is brought to you by Summer Associate Hub. Katurah Topps is a civil rights attorney, but you may know her as one of the final four in season 45 of the hit television show Survivor. Welcome, Katurah.
Thank you, Lavetta. It feels so good to be here.
Listen, I'm excited to have you. Now, I will say I binge watched the whole season twice because I just had to see where things went bad for us.
Oh God. Oh God.
Yeah. You hit a lot and I loved it, but I think that just comes from being a lawyer. On the show, we found out that you had an interesting educational journey. How did that lead you to civil rights law?
Yeah, I guess I gotta go a step back before that, Lavetta, because I feel like I came into the show wanting to hide some parts of me. I wanted to hide that I was an attorney, right? I felt automatically that saying, I'm a New York civil rights lawyer at one of the top civil rights law firms is not going to get me any favors and certainly not going to get me $1 million. And so I felt like I was hiding so much of myself already coming in that I really wanted to take advantage of Survivor as this space where I could share stuff that would be good for my soul and that would help my journey along the way. So I did share, I would say in day 20 in the game, that I had a pretty rough childhood. I was raised in a cult, and a pretty extreme religious cult. And this was extremely difficult for me to talk about too. Like, I've never said those words out loud at any space ever before. You see me saying it on Survivor. Yeah. So it impacted most of my life. Like, right. Like, I was 13, engaged to a 68-year-old white man, and that was my normal, right? Like, that was my day to day. That was celebrated. People were excited for me. This was something I was told is a really big deal. So if you could just imagine being a very young impressionable person, being bombarded with extreme religious policies, right? The last thing people are thinking about is give this girl education. It is the furthest thing, and actually it's almost intentional that I don't get education, right? The cult explicitly said young people shouldn't be in school, but there was an emphasis on young girls not being in school, right? It was told, this is going to be your life. Your body is to be used by others. You are meant to raise children, to bear children, to be a mother, to be a provider, to cook, to clean. Like, and so I got my education, was, here's how you make meals from scratch. Here's how you cook biscuits. Here's how you clean a floor. Like, right? Like, here's how you prepare to raise children. And so that was my life to start. Like, that was the beginning of my life. And just knowing what that meant. Like, I got taken out of school at 10 years old when I was in 5th grade. So I got a taste of public school before I got pulled out, right? So 10 years old, you're aware, you know what the routine is. We go to class, I got my friends, da da da. And so to get that stripped away for so long and for so many years, to not have that in the moment, I actually didn't realize that it was a bad thing. I thought it was normal. And it wasn't until I left and, my mom pulled me out of that. And I kept thinking, okay, cool. Like, I get freedom now, like, I get to show my shoulders because we couldn't wear anything that showed your shoulders or your elbows or your knees. I'm like, oh, I get to wear any clothes I want. I get to be in the world. I get to eat what I want. I'm going to have freedom, whatever freedom means in the mind of a 14-year-old girl. Because I didn't end up leaving the cult until I was 14. And then to just be immediately hit with the reality that actually this world is never meant to give you freedom, particularly not your country. And quickly, we went from this really sheltered community to suddenly I'm on the south side of St. Louis, right? And just like every single major American city, extremely racially segregated. There is a space for the Black people, there's a space for the poor Black people, and I was one of them. And so I feel almost lucky that I was in such an extreme place beforehand, because it let me see the contrast, like, it was almost like I was an immigrant, like coming to America for the first time. I had never known this America, right? I knew inside the walls of my cult, little confines. And now I'm seeing the real America, and I'm like, if I go 10 minutes down the street, there's nice neighborhoods and grocery stores and grass, trees. But when I'm in my neighborhood at home, there's police, there's metal detectors at my school. I'm being harassed everywhere. I'm being treated as I'm a criminal already, and I'm a child. Right. And now, as a civil rights lawyer, I understand that these things are so routine and it's intentional. But in the moment, I remember just seeing such a huge contrast. And that is when I, at 14, was like, as a very naive child, I was like, oh, we just got to change the laws. If I could just help change the laws, then I could help Black people not be treated so terribly. And this is like a young 14-year-old brain. And that's when I decided to become a civil rights lawyer. And it's crazy to me that 20 something years later, I did it, and I'm very proud of that. And for the last 5 years, I've worked at the number one civil rights law firm in the country. I work at the same law firm that gave Black people the right to even be in educational spaces. So it feels like a full circle. I hate the way it had to start, but I wanted to be honest about that stuff. And I never did that before. And so being on Survivor just felt like a once in a lifetime opportunity. And yeah, I just didn't want to let that pass without giving my soul a chance to get something off of my chest.
You said something that really caught me. I grew up on the South Side as well, and I don't know why, but it tends to be the South Side of cities. The grass is a luxury. Seeing grass, trees, things like that is a luxury that you don't necessarily notice until you go, like you said, 10 minutes in either direction. Then you'll see, oh, they have a lawn, not just a patch in front of their house. Like somebody has to get on a riding lawnmower to cut that, and it doesn't happen where I'm from. Now, most people, when they hear civil rights, they all think Martin Luther King, we shall overcome, all of that kind of stuff. What does a typical day look like for a civil rights lawyer?
Well, I think it varies on the type of attorney that you are. Unfortunately, there are thousands of spaces, probably millions really, of spaces to help and protect civil rights in America, right? So it could look really anyway, but for me specifically in the work that I do, my expertise is in policing and technology, and particularly systems that harm Black people. So that's how a lot of my work focuses on policing and technology. And so it really can look like anything. I'm a policy attorney as well. So I focus a lot of my work on creating laws, creating policies, connecting with communities that are impacted by, racist and harmful systems, hearing their stories, prioritizing their stories, and translating that into, okay, what's the policy that we can use to fix this? How do we advocate for them? So a lot of my time could be speaking with legislators, helping write bills, working with research, collecting data, community events. It really could be pretty much anything. But I will caveat that and say, as a civil rights lawyer who focuses on policing and systemic state violence to Black people, 2020 and 2021, oh, it kicked my ass. Yeah, it kicked my ass. And those are probably some of the worst years in my life. And given my background, that says something. It's just a constant reminder of Black pain and Black death. And, as civil rights lawyers countering racism, we know racism is this huge, systemic, decades long monster that's baked into our country. So we don't go, civil rights lawyers are not being like, yay, we got to win. We're going to change racism. Like, no, we know that's not going to happen, right? The important thing is, how can you have incremental wins that change the policies and the practices of the country? And so I think at some point when you have hit after hit after hit, all at once on such a magnitude of George Floyd's murder in 2020 and COVID killing mostly Black people in 2020, like all of those things adding up, it just becomes a lot. And I can't even lie, my heart was heavy. So I took a little bit of a break after Survivor, and I just wanted to enjoy the Survivor experience. Survivor was my escape a little bit, because it always was my escape. It was my escape in real life when I had a crazy hard day at work, or in 2020s when I first started binging Survivor all over again. It was my way to get away from this world. And so it was like, well, the ultimate escape is to be on Survivor, which is kind of crazy. I had other civil rights lawyers message me after they started watching Survivor and be like, "Girl, this was your break." Like, like, are you crazy? This is not a relaxing break. But in a way, when you're on Survivor, you don't have access to the news. You don't have access to your cell phone, right? And I'm a policy attorney. So my whole world is I need to be tapped into what laws are being passed, what's happening in the news, what's the climate of the country. And it felt amazing to step away from that. I was like, keep my cell phone an extra 2 months if y'all want.
But even hungry, that was your break.
Yeah.
Because I saw you lose weight on the show, episode after episode. I was like, oh, those cheeks are leaving. I was like, she's got a good sunburn going.
Yep. Yep. I lost 19 pounds in 25
Oh
days.
my God. Yeah, I was looking at the days like, oh my God, to watch everybody change so quickly. And I didn't realize that it was real time, 3 weeks, and everybody literally just lost all of, like, you look like you've been shipwrecked somewhere. And I can understand why the challenges got so hard. I saw you doing a lot of problem solving on the show. Let's be honest, the water was not your friend. But I saw you doing a lot of the problem solving. Some of the puzzles that you had to do, I was noticing, I was like, okay, so she's good at those, or just who you had to talk to in order to get people on your side. It was almost like winning small juries over.
Yeah.
Is that
Exactly.
something you got from your legal life?
I wish it was actually, but that is something I got from walking in the world with this black body, this woman body, and this queer identity. That is something I feel like I've been practicing for a long time, and even being raised in a really extreme religious cult, right? Like I've learned how to navigate people based on what they see of me and how they perceive me, what they expect from me, what they're comfortable with me doing and seeing, right? Like it kind of even goes back to day one, me being like, let me not talk about being a lawyer. It's because I know this world where I think to survive in the real world, I've had to learn how to make myself palatable, right? Like as a black person, you're constantly figuring out, how do I make myself in a way that those in power feel comfortable with me, that you don't feel threatened by me or intimidated by me or, nervous around me, whatever it is. How do I shrink myself to a level that makes me digestible for you? And it's extremely infuriating. It's ridiculously exhausting. But I felt going into Survivor, the game, I have this master though. That's my specialty, right? Like I've been doing this since I was a kid. I've been surviving literally since I was 10 years old and getting stripped out of schools and told you, here's what your life will be and here's how you need to do, and just no space to protest, right? No space to say no, no space to question or think or speak out loud. You do and you live this life. And kind of, in everyday world, that's kind of our world too as black people. Like there really isn't always spaces to push back on things that are already set up for you. We do it. That's what civil rights lawyers do, and that's why I'm proud of the work I do. But yeah, I felt that problem solving and being able to navigate people, I was there for 25 days and nobody said my name until day 25. So, I'm just saying, like, I know how to do that, right? I know that maneuver. And when you need a smile, you need me to be the, placating one, you need me to stroke your ego, right? Like, that's how I was able to go from this really dirty, really poor young black girl in the middle of nowhere doing these cults to top law schools in the country, top law firms in the country, a corporate lawyer before I was a civil rights lawyer. Those things don't happen by accident. Let me tell you, people aren't accidentally just saying, come on in, black girl. Sure. We want to offer you this. I've had to fight. I've always had to fight for what I've gotten. And I pride myself on being a fighter. And sometimes fighting doesn't mean explicitly looking like a fighter. Sometimes it means smiling and being dumb, pretending that I'm dumb for the moment. Sometimes it means stroking egos. Sometimes what? The sky is blue? Oh my goodness. Thank you for telling me. I had no idea, man. You know what I mean? Like, I felt really, really skilled at those things. And I think that is what took me so far in Survivor.
That what? You haven't I didn't know. That was hilarious to me because I'm like, we all know that she knows, but they don't know that she knows. And to see you put on the mask that a lot of us put on daily just to make yourself seem as one of everybody else. Because there was another African American woman, Sabaya, in the very beginning. They saw her as a threat from the door,
Immediately.
and nobody was looking at you because you knew how to go along to get along. And I think that's something that has been kind of ingrained in us from generations on. And it's something that we still have to do, but it's also something that the younger generation, yours certainly, is starting to shake off. And like you said, have people take you whole. I'm not going to make myself smaller. This is who I am and this is what I'm doing. It seems like the work you're doing in civil rights is way more fulfilling than anything you've ever even done up until this point. Do you find that to be the truth, or is there something else that you think maybe I'll try that later?
Well, the answer is yes and no. I don't think that there's anything I could ever do in my entire life that would be more fulfilling than advocating for Black people, period. I will do it until I die. Even while, like, right now in this period, and I'm on like a little bit of a mental health break and enjoy survivor break, right? I'm thinking of different ways that I may use my skills. It may not be my traditional way of going into my law firm and being, sitting at my desk and sitting in front of a computer for 12, 15 hours a day. It may not be that, but whatever I do, it's always going to incorporate empowering and uplifting Black people because that's my family. That's my community. That's my home. So right now I'm trying to find creative ways of doing that. So I'm starting a YouTube channel and it's in its early stages, but I'm very excited about it. So feel free to follow me on YouTube. But yeah, everything I do is going to be connected to us sharing our stories, sharing how powerful it is. Like I told my story on Survivor that was extremely private and extremely vulnerable. I mean, can you imagine I got judges, millionaires, doctors, lawyers calling me being like, "What the heck? We're in rooms with you all the time and we had no idea this is your background," right? Because I'm holding that in and I firmly believe that Black people all over, and honestly, just a lot of people who are overlooked, who are viewed as discardable, as not valuable, as not important, right? A lot of those people have amazing stories of resilience and strength. And that's what I'm focused on now. I am focused on how to connect with those people and how to share their stories. So it's not traditional civil rights lawyering, but it still is, I believe, uplifting and helping our community.
Absolutely. Now, here at Barrier Breakers, we serve a lot of Black, Indigenous, people of color, and first generation students get to and through law school. Is there a word of encouragement that you can share for someone who thinks that they don't have the right background, they might not have what it takes, but they do have a thought that maybe I need to get in there and change some laws? Can you encourage someone?
Oh my God, absolutely. I mean, the biggest thing I would say is take it from my story. Like, I literally had zero education for years. And I'm assuming, even with poor public schools and, other issues with our education system, most people don't have that. Most people can say, at least I'm going and getting some level of education. So you're already in a significantly better position than I ever was when I decided to become a lawyer. And so if that is possible for me, and I literally went from fifth grade to high school, like that was it. Like imagine leaving fifth grade, having a fifth grade level education, and then now you're suddenly thrown into a high school. And all the adapting and figuring out and understanding that you have to do, it's terrifying, and I still was able to do it. So I would say if anybody's even slightly thinking of it, you got to do it. You absolutely have to do it because there's so many of us that need that. We need more, Black people of color, Indigenous people representation. We need people in the field who think like us, who have our stories, who have our experiences, and who will then be looking to support us. You know what I mean? Like it all works together. And one more thing I will say is when I applied for law school, I didn't even know what law schools existed. Like there was, I don't know what it was, if it was just Google wasn't super popular or my brain or just whatever it was. I didn't even know. I just was just like, I'm going to go to a law school. And then it just so happened that at the time I was applying, I was living in France because I finished college and I'm a first generation college student. So, I'm working 3 jobs the whole time I'm in college, actually 4 jobs, because I was also working on campus to get the free housing. So I'm working 4 jobs in college and trying to keep up with the curriculum. And, by the end of college, I'm spent. I'm just like, that was exhausting. So I take a little break and I go to France for a year to teach English. And while I'm there, I meet this American girl, and she's this girl, and she's like, "Oh, my family's full of lawyers, and da da da. I'm gonna go to law school." So I'm looking at her like, "Oh, you know about law school? Like, tell me what you know. Whatever law school you apply to, I'll apply to," because that's how ignorant I was of the process. And I only say that story to say her dream school turned out to be American University, which is a law school in DC. And I just applied too. I was like, well, if it's her dream school and she's got lawyers in her family, it's got to be good enough for me to apply. Mind you, I don't know any lawyers, never met a lawyer, never heard of a lawyer, don't know anything about lawyers, right? I'm just going step by step, step by step. And eventually, I get to the point where I'm like realizing, oh, American universities in DC. And then somebody's like, oh, it's a great school, one of the great law schools in DC. And I was like, oh, there's multiple law schools in DC? Oh, I had no idea. Well, if that's the case, I want to be at the top law school in DC. And so I literally am Googling, what's the top law school in DC? And they say it's Georgetown. And then that's when I was like, oh, shoot, I want to apply to Georgetown. Like, everything happens for a reason. And I ended up graduating from Georgetown, which is, a really top law school. But I say all that to say, if you're considering it, think about how crazy and unexpected it is that that 10-year-old girl who got pulled out of school ended up graduating from Georgetown Law School. And, I was admittedly very ignorant along the way, very unaware of the process and what the schools are and the ratings and all of that. You don't know it. You don't need to know it all to jump in. You just need to jump in. It'll come along the way. You'll figure it out along the way. And now we have so many spaces for education that I can't even imagine anybody having that same story, right? Like, people will be able to just Google law schools. So just do it. That would be my ultimate, just do it. You can figure it out along the way.
You said something when you said you don't need to have figured out, just jump in and start doing it. I've got to divert from all of that and ask a survivor question. I watched you jump into the sand, try not to go down in the water when they had you on the slide, and you ended up walking off. You didn't want to jump in. Then they jumped in with you later. It was like a panic attack or something. But the whole time I was watching Survivor, I had one thought as an African American woman. And I said, if I speak to her, I got to ask her, how bad did the sand mess up your hair?
The sand is rough. I will say that just the elements in general in Survivor, like, there's nothing fake about the show. Like, you are really out there. We've had nights where it's raining for 6, 7, 8 hours of the night. You're just laying out in the rain getting it all. You feel it when the animals crawl across your chest. You feel it when it's pitch black and there's no slight light, there's no car light, there's no house light. Like, it's pitch black and you hear animal sounds in the jungle. And with the sand is everywhere. Sand just becomes a part of life, and it is what it is. And so I just feel like, I don't know, I felt really connected to it though. I felt at one, I felt with nature. I knew the sand was going to be in my hair, so of course I had braids. I knew I was going to be ripping and running. And honestly, when I came back from the game, I remember just trying to process everything because so much happened during those 25 days that are life altering for me. And I remember just touching my braids. Like, I just didn't even want to take them out yet and being like, these braids hold all the pain, stress, tears, joy, emotions up and down that I had during this entire show. You reach a point where you're caring less about, like, oh my God, do my edges look okay? Is my hair okay? Like, I'm here to fight for $1 million, and I'm here to win, and I'm here to challenge myself in a way that I'm not doing every day when I'm sitting in front of a laptop and working for 15 hours. This is living, and it felt really good to be living.
Now, I got to ask a question for me. I know that once I was voted off, I probably would have cried in the shower that night. What did you do that first night when you got your torch snuffed and you walked away?
Cried the whole night. Cried the entire night. Immediately when your torch is snuffed, you walk away, and then the producers ask you like a little exit interview. How are you feeling? Are you okay? Like all that. And I couldn't even get through it because I was crying so hard because I just believed I just knew I could do it. And it goes back to my childhood. It goes back to this story. I'm like, I don't know anybody in the world who's had to go through what I've had to go through. Like, I've literally lived through modern day slavery. Like, I was an indentured servant for most of my childhood. Like, that's not normal. You know what I mean? And
And on your way to being a child bride.
exactly. I was 15 seconds away from being a child bride. I think I left at 14, and the tradition was most of the girls either got married at 14 or 15. So I was on my way to being a child bride, and I'm pretty sure I would have gotten married earlier because I was engaged to the cult's leader. So there were already rules being bent for me to be able to marry him. And that's just like not typical, right? Like that's just a lot to unpack and to go through. And it means that I've developed this really sharp sense of survival. I have an extremely sharp survival instinct. If you're lying to me, if you're planning to hurt me, if you're emotionally unstable, if you have issues against Black women, I can pick up on all of that instantly. Like, it takes me no time because I've had to do it to literally live. When we ran away from that cult, that wasn't a sweet, okay, we're leaving. That was run for your life. That was get up in the middle of the night. They're chasing you. If they find you, they're going to kill us. And that's not something you play with. So before I ever stepped foot on the beaches of Fiji and played the game of Survivor, I have been practicing how to not have my life in danger. And that is just not even talking about being a woman. That's not even talking about being a Black woman. That's not talking about being a queer woman, right? Like, every layer of who I am is constantly under attack. At all times, I'm the minority. At all times, I'm the one that's, if somebody got a problem and they want to get their anger off, I'm an acceptable, socially acceptable person to do it to. And society won't bat an eye. And I know that all too well. So I felt like all I got to do is take everything that I've been through and apply it to this game. It will all be worth it if I can apply it so masterfully that I walk away with $1 million. And the irony is that same survival instinct that took me all the way up into life, got me all these successes, and living in New York at a top law firm, took me through the first 25 days of Survivor. All of that survival instinct kicked in right at the last minute when I didn't need it to. And I applied that self-preservation. Katurah is going to always find a way to survive. I applied that technique and made a mistake on day 25, and that's what cost me the million. So when I am leaving, I am wrecked. I was just like, you had it. You did it. Black girls do not get that far in Survivor most of the time. Black girls don't even win Survivor. Survivor's been on 45 seasons and two Black girls have won. And it's not even like back to back. Like, one won in season 4, and then 20 years later another one won. And so I was like, you can taste it. You can do it. You can be the exception to the rule. Hell, that's what I've always been, the exception to the rule. That's what I've always been doing, defying the odds, surviving against all odds. And I just knew I had it. And so, yeah, when I realized I messed it up and it was solely me, nobody voted me out. It was just my mistake. I was heartbroken. I was devastated. So I just, yeah, I cried that whole night. And for many weeks after.
I could imagine, but I'm thinking, all of the things that you've been through from the beginning to skipping school to being thrown into high school to ending up on Survivor and then one mistake sending you home. I think all of that has been the ingredients to make you a better person and to help you see the world a little bit different. And I know that moving forward, you are going to make bigger strides in civil rights law just because you've been marginalized in every single spot.
Well, not because I've been marginalized, but despite being marginalized. Yeah.
That's it. That's it. That's it. I thank you so much, Couture, for being my guest today. I have appreciated this interview probably more than I have any other. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Lavetta. I really appreciate it. And for anybody listening, feel free to reach out to me. I love hearing from people. I love hearing people's stories. One of the best parts about me sharing my story on Survivor is I got a flood of people contacting me and telling me their stories and how they've been able to persevere and, push through really unimaginable things that a lot of us are going through in various different ways. And then, of course, follow my YouTube channel and yeah, let's stay in touch.
That's what I wanted. What's the YouTube channel?
It's just at Katurah Topps. We're just starting it, but it's going to be great. We're going to have lots of people's stories on there, my stories, things about Survivor. So I'm really excited about it.
And we'll be following. Thank you, Couture. I appreciate it.